Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading, and there's been a lot of reading. This is my reading week from the 21st until the 27th of October. It's the last official October wrap up video, but obviously there's still a few more days left in October to go. I've basically hit my TBR target for the month, which was amazing. I'll leave my reset up the top if you're interested. And I am busily planning for November, which is going to be a massive Australian author reading month just because of the readathon. So I'm going to be talking about 13 books, somewhere around that mark in this video. I'm going to start off with a couple of new release kids books that are coming out that I did receive for review, starting with my most anticipated picture book of the entire year, which is Walk With Us by Adam Goodes and Ellie Lang and illustrated by David Hardy. This is the fourth book in the Welcome to Our Country series and I adore this. It is a beautiful collaboration that highlights the importance of Indigenous culture and history in such a beautiful way through such gorgeous illustrations and storytelling. So in this book we have Harvey, and at the start of the book he comes home and he's sharing with his mum the Acknowledgement of Country that he's learnt at school, and this inspires her to organise for them to go on a walk through one of their local parkland areas with an Indigenous guide. And as they're going on this walk they learn so much more about the country that they're on, the plants, the animals, all of it, and it's just an absolutely beautiful book. The joy on every page and just the beautiful writing style and the way that people can connect with this story is fabulous. I continue to adore every book that comes out in this series and just want there to continue to be stories for as long as possible. This book was inspired by the Uluru Statement of the Heart, and it's always important to uplift and promote Indigenous voices, but given the light of everything that's happened here recently in Australia, it's even more important to do so. And these books are so crucial for helping to teach and help the younger generations understand and build that connection to our Indigenous peoples and the country where we live. So I love this. And I also have Sky Dragon Book 7 Firestorm. So this is another one of Ando's ongoing serial middle grade series. In this book, Amber and Reggie are reunited and go on a mission to try and track down their parents, but obviously lots of things get in their way. They are constantly being hunted and people are trying to find out the secret identity of Sky Dragon. There is some breaking and entering. There are plenty of action sequences. This book does have a bit of a focus on environmentalism, given that Amber connects with insects and is basically their ally, and it was a really fun installment of this series. So thank you to Alan and Unwin for sending me these two copies for review. I will have reviews for these books on Little Bookish Teacher as well. And then from Fremantle Press I also have a couple of books. So one is a picture book. This is Crow Baby by Helen Milroy, picture book, and this one is the story of Crow Baby, who is a young girl who is born with two spirits. So she's born human and discovers that in her dreams she is a crow and she can help people through her dreams. But when a disaster strikes in the area and she needs to warn her family and her friends, she ends up flying outside of her dreams for the first time. And this means she ends up truly turning into a crow, and it flips those roles. And so she's able to visit her family when she's dreaming. It is a gorgeous story about hard decisions during difficult times. It's about family and understanding and is just beautiful. And the illustrations in this are just stunning. And then there was a young adult title that was sent to me by Fremantle Press. This is An Unexpected Party, queer speculative YA fiction. This one is edited by Seth Malakari, and I forgot to count how many authors there were in here. Did my tabs. All of them are emerging LGBTQIA+ authors, and this was a really interesting collection. There's a lot of variety in the stories. There is a lot of intersection with culture and queer identity. There were quite a few in here that I was really intrigued by and would love to see expanded into larger works, or would love to see what these authors produce in the future. It's been a little while since I read a YA anthology, and I was so glad that this one was sent to me. This was so totally unexpected, no pun intended, that I even received it, and I was so glad that I did, because for as long as I've had my channel, particularly young adult Australian authors have been my passion, because I think we get so many international authors who are amazing and their books are fantastic, but we have such great young adult writers here in Australia, and these anthologies are a great way to discover them. So if you like speculative fiction, if you like elements of magic, magical realism, science fiction in your stories, this is a great one to check out. I love this cover design so much. I love that it's got the flag on the spine of the book as well. And I'm really looking forward to keeping an eye on some of these authors and seeing what they produce in the future. So thank you to Fremantle Press for these books. Again, these will also have reviews on Little Bookish Teacher. Wow, this video is going to be long. I'm just looking at the time on the camera and okay, let's keep this moving. All right, I had 2 rereads this week, so I'm not going to talk about them. The first was In a Jam by Kate Canterbury, which I read for an annotation video. I'll leave that linked on the screen. You can go check that out. I've read that book now 3 times. It is a contemporary romance. It's great. I also reread Magic Strikes by Ilona Andrews on the graphic audio. This is the second time I've listened to the graphic audio. I just needed something comforting playing in the background while I was doing random things around my apartment during the week, so that got read again. I'm also currently over halfway through Masters of Death by Olivia Blake. I did start reading this with my eyeballs, and I have to admit I struggled with reading it because of the way that it has been written, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just I'm not in the headspace to cope with the writing style because there are multiple POV characters, some of whom never get named. At times they're talking to the author, at times we're being told the story. So I switched to the audiobook last night and I actually found that a lot easier. So I'm going to finish reading it in audio because I'm actually really loving the story. It is primarily about a game of gods and we have like a whole cast of characters, but some of the main characters are Fox Demora, who is the godson of Death. Death is a character in the book, and Death has gone missing, and so people have come to Fox to try and track him down. We also have his love interest, Brant, who is a godling, sort of. We have Viola, who is a vampire and a real estate agent who is trying to get rid of a ghost who is haunting a house that she's trying to sell. And somehow all of this is connected. You have demons and angels and everyone under the sun in this book. It has a really fun sense of humor, but again, it's the sort of book that sort of talks itself in circles a little bit as you try and unravel what's going on. And it just wasn't working in connecting with my brain, probably because I'm really tired. So listening to it is a much better option for me and I am really enjoying it. So I'm looking forward to finishing it very soon. Then we come into new reads for me. So I read Maar Bidi, Next Generation Black Writing. This one is edited by Elfie Shiosaki and Linda Martin, and it has an introduction by Kim Scott. This is a First Nations anthology of short stories and prose written by young upcoming Indigenous authors. So all of the authors in here are aged between 18 and 21. And this is all about them exploring and experimenting with storytelling styles. It is an incredibly beautiful little book. It's super tiny and it deals with a lot of contemporary issues for Indigenous people in Australia. It covers everything from the stolen generation and racism to mental illness and sexual assault, but also the hope that the younger generation have. So I was really glad to finally read this one and just to get to know a few new up and coming authors. Just like with An Unexpected Party, this is just a fantastic way to read emerging voices and, you know, to have people to keep an eye on and on my radar for the future. So this was wonderful. Would be great for the Australian Readathon, just saying. Then I finally read the other 2 books that I was missing from the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver, starting with Powerless, which is book 3. Now I did say at some point that I would share my dramas with this book in particular because I love this cover. I have loved this cover since this book was released. I'll talk a bit more about the book in a minute, but this cover is one of my favorite people covers ever. And I wanted it because I hate the discrete covers. I hate the illustrated monstrosities that exist and that this is really hard to get. And so I had to order this from Amazon US. And so I did order it from Amazon US, and the first time that it arrived, this is what arrived. What is this? Like, someone has literally cut out the cover. You might be going, Steph, why have you kept this? Because I wanted to say this is a travesty. What is wrong with people? And then it went out of stock and I couldn't order it and have it sent to Australia because they weren't shipping to Australia. And so I basically just stalked Amazon until I found an option to have it sent back. And then it took 3 months to get here. So that's why I didn't continue the series, because I was waiting for this book to arrive. But anyway, it's here now and it's still one of my favorite covers. This is a small town, childhood friends to lovers, runaway bride story featuring a hockey player and his childhood best friend. And she is about to get married and she realizes on the day of her wedding that she doesn't want to go through with this marriage. Her future husband is an absolute ass and cheats on her at his bachelor party, and she just snaps and goes, not happening. And so she asks Jasper to take her away because she doesn't want to be there anymore. And Sloane has been in love with Jasper for years. There is an age gap between them, and he's always had feelings for her too, but has recognized that there is a power imbalance in their relationship. and that going off to play in the NHL and moving around a lot is not stable. And so he's kept her at arm's length in that regard. And so this book is them figuring it out. And Jasper is also Beau's best friend from Hopeless, which I read last week. And part of Beau's story is that he is in the military, and in this particular book we find out that he has gone missing. And so this affects Jasper quite badly, and so it starts to affect his game. And so he's basically told to take a 2-week break, get his head sorted, and then come back. And so the two of them end up on this road trip together, which forces them to confront their feelings and forces them to actually have a conversation about their attraction to one another and why it may not work. This one is a much slower burn, much slower burn book. It probably could have been condensed. It's quite big. It probably didn't need to be as big as it is, but I still really enjoyed their story and getting to know Sloane and Jasper and how they fit and how their pasts have affected them. Both of them struggle with their birth families, but have, been incorporated into the found family of the Edens. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I will say content warnings in this one for, I think is there a death of a family member? It might be historical off page. There is also anxiety representation on page and also some suicidal ideation at some point. And then I just decided to barrel on with the fourth book, which is Reckless. Again, small town contemporary romance. This one does have a surprise pregnancy and a baby through the whole book, so just be aware of that. And it was told in a very interesting way, which I'll get to in a minute. So this is the story of Winter and Theo. Theo is the protege of the hero from the first book. He is a bull rider, and the heroine is Winter, and she is the half-sister of the heroine from the first book, and their relationship is quite strained. And so they are trying to rebuild their relationship when she leaves her very toxic marriage, and her husband is an asshole. When Theo and Winter first meet, they just snark at each other the entire night, but they end up having a one-night stand. And then he goes off onto the bull riding circuit, and Winter realizes that she's pregnant, and she tries to get a hold of him when she finds out, and she gets a very weird response, and so she just decides not to bother because she thinks he doesn't care. And it's not until 18 months later that Theo is back in town, and he ends up moving in next door to Winter and finds out that she has a child. And he quickly does the math, and he's devastated that he didn't know and that he's not been around for the first 9 months of his baby's life. Editing Steph here. I forgot to say that Theo is one of the most cinnamon roll to have ever cinnamon rolled, and is just a precious golden retriever. Like he's probably the sweetheart of the books that I read this week. Like he was just adorable, and I kind of loved him. And Winter is the kind of character who, she's the black cat. She's very closed off. She does everything she can to protect herself. And she's in the past dealt with infertility issues and miscarriage. So there are, content warnings for that in here. And while she wasn't sure if she could raise a child on her own, like this, her baby is now her life. And she doesn't know what she wants to do now that Theo's back. And she realizes pretty quickly that the man who sent her the text message response when she tried to contact him about being pregnant and the man who is there now, there's something going on. And so there's that element of miscommunication in there. And so the two of them figure out what this new relationship of theirs looks like. Considering this was a surprise pregnancy and there was a baby all the way through it, I actually really enjoyed this one. The one thing though that I will find strange is considering that all of Elsie Silver's books are open door, their one night stand is closed door. Like it fades to black very quickly, and then we time jump ahead as we do a couple of time jumps as Winter is figuring out that she's pregnant, and then again that she's had the baby. So we don't go through all of that, the 9 months of being pregnant, which to be honest, I'm grateful for. I just thought it was really weird. The first time they're together is closed door. Everything else is open door later on. So I've really enjoyed catching up on this series. I don't mind a small town romance. And again, beautiful covers. Why do we get ridiculous covers when we can have these things? Better keep moving, otherwise this is just going to keep going and going and going. I also read Summoning Up Love by Cynthia Williams. This is the first book in the Heart and Soul series. So this is a Harlequin special edition, and this is a paranormal romance-ish. So this one is about Vanessa, who ends up staying at her grandmother's beach house when she loses her job and she's trying to figure out what she's going to do moving forward. She's a reporter. She has a very investigative reporter mindset, and she finds out that her mother has hired a group of guys to come and try and figure out if her grandfather's ghost is haunting her grandmother's house. And she is incredibly skeptical. She thinks these guys are basically robbing her grandmother of money. However, Dion is determined to prove to her that that's not what they do. They actually can identify and communicate with ghosts and try and help them to move on if needed. That's sort of their side hustle. I think he's working with his brothers, and his brothers are trying to get a paranormal TV show, and they want to use her grandmother's house for the pilot of it because they've lived in the town their whole lives and her grandmother trusts them. But she remains skeptical until she has a couple of encounters that Dion has to help her out of that she can't quite explain. So this was really fun. It's a fairly short and quick and easy read, and it was just really delightful. It's a great book for October if you want a ghost story that's not scary. I also picked up 2 prequel novellas in the Demonic Messes and Other Annoyances series by L.L. Frost. So in one of my vlogs, I read The Cleaners and loved that. And so I wanted to go back and read a couple of the short stories before I move on. The first one is called Drunk Girl. They all follow the same characters from the main series. So we have Pen, who is a half demon. We have Flint, who is a human witch. And we have Mark, who is possessed by a demon. And we also have Detective Sharp, who is the potential 4th love interest for this polyamorous little group. Essentially, Pen, Flint, and Mark are hunting down a demon on Christmas Eve, to which Flint is not happy about because he wants to be at home in matching pajamas and just enjoying the Christmas season. But the situation ends up a lot more complicated than they first thought, and Detective Sharp is on their trail and he knows that they're involved but he can't prove it. And this one is just another little setup story to show sort of where their history is and the fact that he knows that something is going on and he is trying to build this relationship with the 3 of them, and yet they can't tell him the truth. It was really fun. And then Doom Dog was the second one, and this one featured a puka. Pen, Flint, and Mark are tracking down a puka, and they're in a small town. They're having to stay in a B&B, which Pen is disturbed about because she thinks small towns and B&Bs are creepy. And yeah, things get very complicated very quickly when they try and stop the puka, and they discover that maybe that's not the only demon in town and that other things are going on. Really fun little shorts. Very easy to read, great for Halloween season. And the final book I read this week was another arc, and this one is Hoarded by the Dragon by Lillian Lark. So this is the next book in the Monstrous Matches series. This one also has a surprise pregnancy storyline. This is my theme this week apparently, and I'm not hating it, which is the biggest surprise of everything. So this is the story of Katerina, who is a thief, and she's tasked with breaking and entering into a dragon's home and stealing something from his hoard. He catches her and she strikes a deal with him because he is in heat, and she says, you can do whatever you like with me if I can have the object that I'm trying to steal at the end. And so they have this very, very hot one night, and at the end he keeps his deal, he walks away from her and he lets her take what she was after. And she realizes very quickly, because you know this is paranormal and she's a witch and he's a dragon, and she realizes very quickly that she is probably pregnant. And she ends up going back to him, and he's very cold to her initially, but realizes that she's actually telling the truth because she's a witch carrying a dragon baby, and things do not go smoothly with this pregnancy. So be aware of that. There is a lot of things that go on with this pregnancy that need to be dealt with because dragon babies need a lot of heat energy and she's only human. And so eventually he realizes that she's telling the truth and that she needs his help. And we slowly unravel that, you know, he has had a mate in the past and a child and they died. This has caused quite a lot of issues for him in terms of being able to connect with other people. The problem being that his dragon has mated with Katerina, and so he needs to figure out what he's going to do and how he is going to be able to move forward. If you like monster romances, if you like magic, if you like two-peens and all sorts of setups for sex scenes, then you are in for a treat with this one. There is nodding, there is breeding kink. It is really fun, really enjoyable. There is a birth scene at the end of the book, so do be aware of that going into it if you don't want that in there. But it's Lillian Lark, and I trust her to do pretty much anything, and this was no exception. So that is everything that I read this week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you've read any of these books or if you're planning on picking them up. Otherwise, feel free to share something that you have been reading and loving this week, or leave me a dragon emoji to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you're in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.